Okay, good morning or afternoon, everybody, and welcome to A Sailor's Life Live, which is our weekly educational series from USS Constitution Museum. My name is Emily. I'm an educator at the museum, and we are a museum located in Boston, Massachusetts, that tells the story of the USS Constitution, which is also located in Boston, Massachusetts, right across the yard from us. And now Constitution, her story is shared. We partnership with the US Navy to tell her story. The Constitution has an active duty Navy crew of about 80 sailors on board. And we're joined by one today who's gonna be my co-host. And so Zachary, can you take it away and say hi?
Hello, y'all. My name is Zachary. I am a sailor in the United States Navy. I work here aboard the United States Constitution. I've been with the crew for about 6 months now, and I'm excited to be here today and to tell you a little bit about the ship's history and some of the fun facts about the ship.
Awesome. Glad to have you on board. So, Zachary, I'm going to start with a question, which is a really hard question. What is your favorite animal?
Oh, my favorite animal, it might be a little strange for some, but I actually really like snakes. I used to, right before I joined the Navy, I used to live in a house where we had a lot of roommates, and we all owned reptiles. And between us, we owned 11 pythons in one house, not to count lizards and other things.
Oh gosh, okay. I think, yeah, wow. I think a lot of people might be weirded out by that, but that's your thing. Do it. We're gonna, I wanna ask the crowd out there who's watching today the same question. We're talking about animals today on the ship. So if you wanna use that chat function down at the bottom of your screen and tell us what is your favorite animal, because we're gonna be talking about animals today, and animals on a ship might seem unexpected. But certainly in USS Constitution's history, there were a lot of animals on board, and those were both real animals and objects that sailors used that were named after animals. And so we're gonna go on a whirlwind trip today through the animal kingdom on USS Constitution. And so I'm looking in the chat, check that out, what people are writing. Horses, monkey, tiger, cat. Okay, so you guys are gonna be in luck as we talk about today. See if your favorite animal comes up. And Zachary, you might be surprised too, because we might even see some snakes, okay? So keep an eye out, keep an eye out. So to start, I will also say this about the Zoom webinar feature. If you're just joining us, at the bottom of your screen is also a Q&A button. That's the place if you have a question that comes up during our talk today, please type it in there and my colleague who's behind the scenes will happily answer that for you, okay? So Zachary, I'm gonna talk about something first and then we're gonna catch up with you in a second. Sounds good?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, all right. So we're gonna start. The first animal we're gonna talk about is humans' best friend, okay? The dog. People love dogs, and Constitution's probably most famous animal on board was the dog, Guerrier the Terrier. Now, Guerrier is a French word that means warrior. And this little dog came on board with Lieutenant Beekman Hoffman in 1812. And this dog, as the crew wrote, as you can see on your screen, a quote from one of the crew, this dog, from the very great sagacity with which he was gifted, had become a great favorite with all hands, officers, and men. And sagacity means wisdom. This dog was a smart little guy, and he helped out a lot around the ship. And rather than have me tell you how he helped out around the ship, I'm gonna play you a song. My colleague Gary at the museum wrote a sea shanty about Guerrier the Terrier, this real life dog, and I'm gonna share a little bit with you now.
Guerrier the Terrier, bark, bark, bark. Does he see a seagull or does he smell a shark? Biting at the sailor's heels, nip, 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 to show the sailors where to look to find the other ship. Guerrier the Terrier had a job to do, brought on ship to stop the rats from eating all the food. They eat the biscuits, peas and rice, you find them everywhere, but they'll jump ship when they feel the nip of the terrier, Guerrier. When the boatswain pipes all hands to help to raise a sail, Guerriere reports to him with an eager wagging tail. Haul away, the boatswain shouts, all hands to pull the lines. It's Guerriere who bites the end and hauls the rope in time. Guerriere the terrier, bark, bark, bark. Does he see a seagull or does he smell a shark? Biting at the sailor's heels, nip, 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 to show the sailors where to look to find the other ship.
All right. So that is a song that is a beloved song at the USS Constitution Museum and tells the story of Guerriere. So you can see he was helping out around the deck. He was friendly with all the crew. And I'm going to let you watch the rest of the video to get the full story of Guerriere's moment of glory. And my colleague is going to share that video link for you in the chat. So on your own time, you can watch that. But I wanted to tell you too that Guerriere's moment of glory did come when he was on deck one day. No one was really paying attention to what was going on around them. He starts barking and barking and barking, and it turns out that he sighted a ship off the Constitution and alerted everybody on deck to that ship's presence. And luckily that ship was a friendly ship. It was a Portuguese frigate, so no worry about that. But that was definitely Guerriere's shining moment on deck, and enough to get recorded in a sailor's journal in the historical record. Now Guerriere, that's the happy part of his life. He was so dedicated to Constitution that his fate was a bit sad. He was on the ship for a couple years until the battle with the HMS Cyane and Levant that Constitution had. You can see that battle pictured here. And during that battle, Constitution captured the HMS Cyane and took her as a prize ship. And Lieutenant Hoffman, who was Guerriere's owner, was placed to crew that prize ship. So he sailed the prize ship back into port with Guerriere, but once in port, Guerriere just couldn't stay away from the Constitution, and he jumped overboard of the Cyane and tried to swim out to Constitution, and he drowned. So that is the sad tale of Guerriere, but he definitely was fiercely loyal to the Constitution. And as I said, he's a really special character in history for us. And if you come to the museum, you can see a lot of his presence there. So that's Guerriere. Hopefully you can get that song in your head. It's definitely a catchy one. There was another dog on ship as well. That was a little harder to spy. And those dogs technically belong to Isaac Hull in the sense that when he was captain of the ship during War of 1812, he had his own personal utensil set. And on that set, he had engraved his personal crest, which was a dog head surrounded by laurels. Another dog on the ship that would come about every day was the dog watch. And the dog watch was a period of time when the sailors had to be alert and on duty. Now, normally a sailor's watch was 4 hours long, but the dog watch was a 2-hour watch from 4 to 6 p.m. and from 6 to 8 p.m. And so we're not really sure why this was called the dog watch, but one theory is that if you had that watch, it was like when a dog was sleeping. A dog sleeps fitfully, it's alert, it's a light sleeper. And so on the dog watch, if you were sleeping during those 2 hours, there's a sense that you didn't have a very good sleep. You had a dog's sleep. So a little bit of a mystery on that term. There's some other theories as well that have nothing to do with dogs as animals. But that's our dogs on USS Constitution. Let's get to the other folks, the other animal out there for those cat people, the cats. There certainly were real cats on board the ship to help catch the rats, as we'll see a little later. But there was another cat on board the ship that you never wanted to see. And that was the cat of 9 tails. The cat of 9 tails is a whip, and it was used for discipline. And you can see it was called the cat of 9 tails because there are 9 strands to the whip. Now, Zachary, we're going to bring you in here and have you talk to us a little about why would you have used this? Why was this whip taken out on ship? Tell us what discipline was like.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about the discipline here on the ship. No sailor would ever want to see the cat of 9 tails, but back in the day on the ship, corporal punishment, that is punishment by this whipping, would have been considered very regular, and was done at different frequencies with different captains. One of the captains here on the Constitution, Isaac Hull, was known for his restraint in using it. He didn't particularly like to use it on his sailors, and he used it very sparingly, which is why his crew very much loved him, as no one likes to see it. But what would happen if you were to be sentenced to some lashes, and you could get sentenced to any number of lashes, but generally with the max being 12 in a single sitting, somebody would go retrieve the cat of nine tails and pull it out of a bag. This is where we actually get the phrase, letting the cat out of the bag, letting the cat of nine tails out of the bag. You don't ever want to have the cat get out of the bag. The captain would call the crew, ahoy, all hands to punishment. Everyone would come and watch and spectate as the sailor would be tied to the taffrail, which is this little portion right here. And they would be, or to a shroud sometimes on some ships. Also, the whole crew would gather, and the bosun, who is normally in charge of the line operation and sort of the mechanical operation of the sails and of the ship, would be in charge of the actual administration of the punishment. So standing by would be the master of arms, the sailor on the ship who is in charge of discipline, the surgeon, for the medical reasons of the whipping could potentially harm the sailor, and if it needed to be stopped and done at a later date, that would be done and determined by the surgeon, and the bosun, who would actually be administering the lashes. And the sailor would be lashed, and that would be his punishment. It was always assigned by the captain. And if it was unable to be administered in one day, in one sitting, they would push it out until the sailor was healthy enough to receive the rest of their lashes.
Okay. So thanks, Zachary. Yeah, I've been showing while you're talking an illustration of what that scene might look like on ship, and you explained that very well. And also interesting to hear that the expression "don't let the cat out of the bag" came from this instrument here, this cat of nine tails. Thank you, Zachary. We're gonna check back with you in a little bit because we're gonna move on to our next animal here, our next category of animals, which were the unwanted animals on the ship. Dogs and cats, everybody loves them. They're our beloved pets. But there were some animals on the ship that you didn't really like having around, but it was just a reality. And one of those animals were rats. Rats were a reality on ship. There was tons of food stored down below on USS Constitution, and where there's food stored, there's going to be rats looking for food. And so a dog like Ayers or a ship's cat is going to be down roaming around there trying to catch those rats. And we have a game at our museum website that you can play called Rats in the Hold, and you can try yourself trying to hit some of these rats here. So this is what it looks like. Boom, 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 boom. Oh God, that's the cat. You don't want to hit the cat. Rats. Yeah. Got it. Yeah. Level completed. I scared the rats away. So that game goes on and on. It gets a little harder with the rats popping up in more places. And feel free to play that game on our website. I'll have my colleague Sarah will share that in the chat as well. So rats were definitely an unwanted animal on the ship. They ate the food. They ate this ship's biscuit. Another animal that you might find in your ship's biscuit were these guys, these beetles. And beetles were definitely a part of life on the ship because they loved the bread, they loved the flour, and that's where they hung out and reproduced and multiplied. So these two beetles, the one on your left is a candle beetle, and the one on your right is known as a bread or biscuit beetle. The sailors often mistook these for a cockroach. And these lived in your flour, and as I said, were multiplied easily on the ship. And so most likely you were eating food with these bugs in it on a daily basis, unknowingly, because they are really, really small. really small animals there. So that's just part of your life on ship, is you're getting a little extra protein with these guys in your ship's biscuit. Another unwanted insect on the ship are these guys. Ugh. These are shipworm. And that name is pretty self-explanatory. They live underwater and they eat ships. They eat the wood of ships. And so, Zachary, were these worms a problem on USS Constitution?
So, thank you, Emily. One of the actual beautiful things about this ship, as we might know a lot of people know the name of this ship, Old Ironsides. Now, a lot of people think Ironsides, her sides must be made of iron. As you can see here, she is fully made of wood through and through. But what she does have on her sides is a plate of copper sheeting down underneath the waterline of the ship. This copper sheeting makes it difficult for things such as shipworms to live, because it's they're unable to burrow through the copper. And one of the reasons that we do this is to prevent that kind of ship rot. We actually got all the copper here from Paul Revere, and we were able, that is his connection to our ship. We were able to get that plated on, and that protected our ship out in the open ocean.
Yeah, okay, so Constitution, she was lucky in that she didn't really have to deal with shipworm because she had lots of copper. While you were talking, showing some illustrations of that, this is the ship being plated with copper early on in her career. This is the most recent restoration of her copper being put on. And then, of course, this photograph here shows a sense of how much of the bottom of Constitution is covered with copper. And that is all just to stop that kind of gross looking shipworm, which will eat right through your ship. So, well said. And Zachary, I forgot, yeah, you're standing next to something that had to do with the rats, right?
So yes, this right here is what is known as the steep tub. So a sailor back in the day would often get one hot meal a day. This hot meal was a cooked meat known as salt junk. And we call it salt junk because it's mostly salt. It was 2 parts salt to 1 part beef or pork that was stored on the ship. This is before refrigeration, so you have to use a large amount of salt to keep the meat fresh on a long voyage. But you wouldn't want to eat 2 lumps of salt for every piece of pork you were eating. So what they would do is they would put it right here in this cask, and they would wash the salt off over the day. Over the course of a 24-hour period, they would get all the salt off before they cooked it. But any kind of barrel like these, anything that had meat or grain or any kind of thing that a shipboard pest might like, this is what they would try to break into. So we actually had people doing regular inspections and always maintaining the barrels aboard the ship. The position that did that was known as the cooper on the ship.
Okay, yeah, good to know. Okay, I didn't know that. That's really good to know. Thank you. Yeah, so good shot of the barrel there. Hopefully no rats in that today. We are going to focus on our next group of animals. So we've talked about some of the unwanted animals on ship, our rats, our beetles, our shipworm. And now we're going to get into some of the more exotic animals, the animals you really wouldn't expect to find on a ship like USS Constitution. So this is where you keep your eye out for your favorite animal. And the first one we're going to talk about are dragons. I know that's not a real animal, but it's a very cool fictional animal. And there's a couple dragon sightings on USS Constitution. This is a plate that was taken off of HMS Guerriere after Constitution beat her in the battle. Sailors took this as a souvenir, and you can see some beautiful Chinese dragons on that plate and a snake. So there's a snake sighting for Zachary. There's a snake there in the middle. Another dragon you can find on Constitution would have been from 1906 to 1927. And this is a dragon carving on USS Constitution's billet head. A billet head is a type of decorative work that was a decorative woodwork that was on the ship. And Not sure, like I said, this was put on in the 1906 restoration, was on about 20 years, and was based off of a model from 1812 that restorers had at the time of the ship. Constitution no longer has a dragon on her billet head. That's been changed. Not sure if that really was there originally or not, but for a while this dragon was hanging out on Constitution. Our next animal, one of my personal favorites, and I saw some of you in the chat also liked it, monkeys. What's a sailor or a pirate without a pet monkey? And Constitution was no different. Constitution in the 1930s went on a national cruise. She went to several ports in the United States to celebrate her recent restoration. And there was a monkey on board. Her name was Rosie, and she was a spider monkey. And we know about her because crew members at the time kept scrapbooks with personal photographs. And so this is from one of those scrapbooks of Rosie hanging out on the rigging and Rosie hanging out on the ship's bell. And that's one monkey that Constitution had. And Zachary's been carrying around another monkey this whole time that he's going to talk to us about. So Zachary, want to tell us about what you have around your neck there?
Yes, absolutely. This right here is a knot known as a monkey's fist. It was a knot that sailors used to tie back in the day to do a very important piece of work. The idea is that when you were to moor the ship to a pier, that is, whenever you were to pull the ship into harbor and tie her up so that way she wouldn't float off into the ocean, you would need to get line, any of these kind of ropes you see around here, from the ship on to the pier. The way that you would do it is you would tie a monkey's fist into the top of the line, and you would use it to swing and heave over the ship to somebody standing pier side to catch it and to begin to moor up the ship. And
so are they always that small?
They can be made in a number of sizes. This one is kind of sized to the line that we have, but the idea behind them is that they're big enough to give enough weight to where you can get a nice swinging momentum, but also small enough to where somebody could catch it.
Oh, okay. And does everyone on the crew know how to make something like that?
So not every sailor would know how to make this. Often, if we're talking about the modern Navy, the people that you could find that know how to make this are bosun's mates. They often work with line very traditionally. They get their name from the bosun that I was talking about earlier, whose ward was the lines, the mechanical operation of the ship. But anyone can learn to tie them. They're not a particularly hard knot to tie if you ever are curious about making your own monkey's fists.
Okay, good. That's a good challenge for everyone out there is if you're bored this summer, go work on making a monkey's fist. Awesome. That's really cool to see. Thank you for showing us that. Yeah. So we have our monkey, we have our real monkey and our monkey's fist that was used on a daily basis on the ship. Here is a close-up picture of that monkey's fist that Zachary had for you. Other animals that were on the national cruise in 1930 besides the monkey was a bear named Scrappy. Don't know a lot about this bear. He shows up in the scrapbooks. This is a photograph of him on the tugboat that was used for Constitution. So he was hanging around during the national cruise at one point as well. And then another really exotic animal on board were two jaguars. And this is a label from our museum, and it shows basically in an advertisement or a newspaper article that two tigers were taken on board USS Constitution. And indeed that was the case. In 1814, Constitution stopped a British ship named Susanna, took her cargo, which included these two tigers. Well, historians now believe they were actually jaguars. But tigers or jaguars, either way, these were taken to the United States and displayed in taverns, area taverns, for a fee. So it was like a special show to see these tigers and jaguars that you had to pay for. And the sailors apparently liked having these guys on the ship. They described them as quite playful with the men, very tame and gentle, except when eating. And so I will sadly say that one of the ship's cats was a victim to these tigers, jaguars, and another monkey that was on board at the time barely escaped them. So a little bit of drama with the jaguars on Constitution in 1814. The next animal we're going to talk about is definitely one you would see on a patriotic warship like USS Constitution, and that's the eagle. This eagle is on Constitution's stern. It's on the back of the ship. Great close-up photograph here of it being repainted during restoration. And so you'll find eagles on a lot of military things. It's a symbol of our United States. It's our national bird. And another place you'll find it on the ship is above one of the guns. And so Zachary, can you show us what that's about? Where's this other eagle?
Absolutely. We have a gun right here named the Raging Eagle. And you may wonder, why do our guns have nameplates? We tended to name all of the guns on our ship as we had crews assigned to a specific gun. This is the same way someone might name their car or might name their guitar, something that they work with a lot and have a certain, I guess you could say, affection for. You have a crew of 9 to 14 men that would be assigned to a single ship's gun. And in some ways, the name is practical. Sometimes it's easier to say, go do maintenance on the Raging Eagle than it is to say, go do maintenance on the 4th gun starboard side or 5th gun starboard side or so what have you. It was a little way to just kind of say exactly where things were, but it was also kind of an affectionate pet name that people had for their favorite guns.
Yeah, I think that would really get me hyped to say I'm going to go fire Raging Eagle. I love that name. Yeah. And there's another animal. I'm not going to have you walk over there, Zachary, but there is another animal gun name, right?
Yes. There was one in the captain's cabin called the Rattlesnake. So one of my favorites.
There we go. Okay, there's another snake sighting. Awesome. Good to see. Yeah, Raging Eagle. Okay, and you guys have another eagle-like animal that hangs around nowadays, right?
Yes, we do. We have a eagle that, or a hawk, that is always here in the Navy Yard. I saw him not but maybe 2 days ago. I see him every couple days. He's always around hunting, and sometimes I see him on the ship's yards, out when we're doing colors. His name is Scuttlebutt, and he patrols. This is kind of his little area here in Charlestown. But since this is one of the highest points in Charlestown, he really loves to get on top of the ship, and is kind of a favorite pet of the crew here.
Yeah, that's same for us at the museum. Our offices are on the 3rd floor of our museum, and so we look out over the yard, and we're always looking for scuttlebutt sightings. And one day, actually, we saw it feeding on a squirrel. So that was really amazing. Yeah, so I'm showing folks at home a really beautiful photograph that one of your colleagues took on the ship of Scuttlebutt. And here's another photograph of it with that American flag in the background. What is a scuttlebutt, Zachary? What does that mean?
All right, so a scuttlebutt is and some of you might know the term as a rumor. You might have heard someone say, what's the scuttlebutt? But in the Navy, what we have always used the word scuttlebutt to mean was, well, first, a butt was a unit of measurement for a barrel. So that was the size of a barrel. A scuttle is a hole. So it was a butt with a scuttle in it. That is the size of barrel and the way that we would orient it to store our fresh water. Think of it kind of like the water fountain of the ship. It would be a barrel with a hole cut in the top of it that you would go with a ladle and scoop your fresh water out for the day. This, because as rumors always get started around the water fountain, that is the way that we sort of got that term. And still today in the modern Navy, we still call water fountains, whether they're aboard ships or here at the command, we call them scuttlebutts.
Okay, very cool. So yeah, so Scuttlebutt was named My understanding is that the USS Constitution crew, they did a naming contest, a public voting naming contest, and Scuttlebutt was the one that won. My colleague and I, we were really rooting for Eyes, Hawk, Hull. We love the bad puns there. Old Feather Sides was an option as well, if I recall. So Scuttlebutt won out, but thank you. It is rooted in a real nautical term. So appreciate that explanation. We have a little time, Zachary, so I am going to just talk quickly about the last type of animal that would have been on the ship, which we've talked about animals you liked as your pets. You talked about animals you didn't want on your ship, animals that were on for a little bit, kind of exotic, unexpected ones. Then you had the animals that helped you survive, the ones that you ate. And so here we have an illustration of the chicken coop on Constitution, and you also had animal stalls on the ship as well. They kept live animals on the ship among the sailors for their eggs, for their milk, and also for their meat. And I think Zachary wanted to show us a little bit about the mechanics of trying to get a large animal on the ship.
Yeah, so we did keep some animals for fresh meat because, of course, having something like salt junk, 2 parts salt, 1 part meat, salty meat that's been sitting down in a barrel at the bottom of an unrefrigerated ship for the duration of your tour can be not the most fun. So so we would try to leave with some large animals in order to feed the crew some more pleasant meals, at least for the beginning duration of their trip. But how do you get a cow aboard a ship? You can't walk them up the tiny brow or the little bridge that takes you from the pier to the ship. That's probably enough for 2 people to walk side by side, and that would be pretty tight. So a whole cow is not going to get up that. You have to get them on the ship some other way. So right here we have the main hatch. This is, we are standing under the top deck. We are on the 2nd deck down. So we would take them through this main hatch. We would lift them up by crane, and we would actually use the yards of the ship. So if you think about the masts of the ship, you have your vertical mast, which you can actually see one right here running through the ship. Those are the masts. On them are the horizontal bars. Those horizontal bars are called the yards, and we would set the sails off of them. But you could also use them to pick up something. They can hold a lot of weight. Sails weigh a lot, so does a cow. You would be able to attach the cow on a harness and then use the yard and turn it as if you were turning a sail into the wind, and actually take the cow or the goat or whatever you might be trying to put on the ship and drop them in like you would for other heavy materials. We would actually keep most of those animals forward of the stove, which we call the camboose. It would have been forward, and in that area would have been chickens, cows, goats, and other things things that we needed or wanted to eat during our underways.
Now, was that fresh meat going to the majority of like the sailors, or were those meats for the officers?
So some of the meat would have been used in the beginning for the sailors, but often the choicer cuts and the better quality of living would have been going to the officers. Okay. But at a certain point of your voyage, you will have run through all of that either way. And everybody would be eating the same salt junk and chips, biscuits by the time your supplies started to get low.
Yep, back to the ship's biscuit with the beetles and the rats at some point. Well, thank you for that. Good. I just want to point out my colleague Gary, who's joining us today in the chat. He said that there's a quote from the officers that squirrels used to entertain the crew when they ran around in the rigging. So that was an animal thing I had not heard on Constitution. So there are animals everywhere, and today I hope we gave you a sense of the animal kingdom that was on USS Constitution, whether that was for food, whether that was for entertainment and for pets, or whether they were just animals that you kind of dealt with and coexisted with but didn't necessarily like. So I have a poll for you all that I'm going to launch on our screen here. Out of all the animals we talked about today, if you were a sailor on USS Constitution, which animal would you have most liked to be on board with you? So I named some of the ones we talked about. Do you want to be on board with the dog, the monkey, the hawk, the rats, the bear? So if you could vote in that poll, we'll take a second here. Looking here at the poll. Let's see. I see the dog is winning out. The jaguars are second. Okay, I think we're going to end our poll here and show you the results that Gary the Terrier has won. So you guys are some dog people out there. And Rosie and the jaguars tied for second. Let's share those results with you guys. So yeah, you guys don't have any pets on Constitution today, right, Zachary?
We do not have any pets today, besides Scuttlebutt here. But otherwise, we do not keep animals on the ship at the current time.
Yep, times have changed, and that's okay. So I want to thank you, Zachary. Do you have any parting words for our crowd?
I just wanted to say thank you for coming out with us and seeing some of the ship. I hope you guys watch more of these. We have more facts coming every day. We also have live tours that we do daily of the ship. So please come and join us. We also have a large 4th of July event that we're streaming on Facebook Live. It's going to be a lot of fun. You'll get to see a lot of the historic stuff. You'll actually get to see me on a pike team doing some pike drills, and you'll get to see a lot of very cool things happening for 4th of July.
Oh, that's awesome. Cool. And thank you to your colleague who's been behind the camera for this. I'm Emily from the Constitution Museum, signing off of our Sailor's Life Live. We will see you next week. And feel free, at the end, you'll get a survey. We would love your feedback on how you like today's program. And a link is in our chat for more information about our 4th of July events. Thank you, Zachary. God, we got to see some snakes. Yeah, I'll see you next time. All right, bye, Jacqueline and our cameraman.
Bye.